Tim Banks is fired. Tennessee is retooling its roster, first with recruits, eventually transfers, and there's still a Music City Bowl to be played. Welcome to the Volunteer State. I'm Tennessee beat writer Adam Sparks, along with John Adams of the Knoxville News Sentinel. On this episode, we're going to look forward to the finale of the 2025 season. Yes, that is still going. That's the Music City Bowl against Illinois. But more so, we're going to discuss where this team is going in 2026. Um, Signing day is over. The transfer portal strategy is already playing out behind the scenes for the Vols. And the first major move on the coaching staff has just occurred. And that's where we're going to start. Tim Banks has been fired after 5 seasons as Josh Heupel's defensive coordinator. Contrary to popular opinion, Banks actually had more than just one good season at UT. I got that a lot from social media today that, hey, the guy had one good year and 4 bad ones. That's not true. His defenses got better each season he was at Tennessee. It was bad in 21 for understandable reasons. It was competitive in 2022. 36th in the country in scoring that year. Was 22nd in scoring in 2023. It's a good defense in 2023 and an elite defense in 2024, but took a big step back this season. And so Josh Heupel has moved on from Tim Banks. It's notable for a few reasons. One is that Josh Heupel had never fired an assistant as after what I think 8 years as a head coach. He had never fired an assistant, but the Tim Banks tenure had run its course. William Inge, the linebackers coach for Tennessee, is going to serve as the interim defensive coordinator in the Music City Bowl. So already there's names getting thrown around. We'll see how many of them actually come to fruition. But John, I want to get your first take on just what you thought of did the Tim Banks firing have to happen? And then, do you have somebody just in mind you think Josh Heupel should go after?
Well, the timing was interesting. It was right after you had your signing date, so you locked down those commitments before you got rid of any coaches. And I genuinely believe this was a difficult choice for Josh Heupel because he has prioritized consistency, continuity with his staff. As you pointed out, he hadn't fired anybody, so he believes in maintaining his staff. But I just think it was called for based on the way this season went. Every team except Florida, a very limited Florida team, by the way. I guess that's pretty obvious. I didn't need to say that. Every team in the SEC but Florida scored more than 30 points on Tennessee's defense. You can't win a championship that way. And in Tennessee's case, you couldn't make the playoff. Go back to that Tennessee-Georgia game early in the season, 44-41. Georgia prevailed in overtime. Neither one of those defenses could stop anybody. But then look at how much better Georgia got defensively over the course of the year. It was a much better defense at the end of the season than it was in the beginning. Tennessee's didn't get any better. What you saw against Georgia is what you saw all year long. It just kind of depended on how good the opposing offense was. But I think the killer blow was delivered by Vanderbilt in that dreadful second half where Diego Pavia did everything but just claim the Heisman Trophy. 165 yards rushing in that game, and Tennessee didn't employ a pretty common strategy of shadowing him, having as they call it, a spy, tracking his moves. So to cut off those running lanes for him, the opportunity, he ran for 165 yards against Tennessee. And I just thought that was the tipping point for him. Did it have to happen? No, it didn't have to happen, but I thought it was probably in the best interest of the program. I did get an email from somebody who said, well, why not just buy better players for defense? And that's a valid point. When you go back to last year, as you said, it was an elite defense. So maybe if you go out and you get the right guys like Texas Tech did and you sign your front 4 and pay them a lot of money, maybe you wouldn't need a defense coordinator. But just based on the way the season went, I think, though, being a tough choice for him was probably the right choice.
Yeah, that's an interesting suggestion. Just go buy a bunch of better players, and we'll talk about that later in the episode. Is that you know this is probably going to be the year where Tennessee spends the most money on its defense. Most of the main pieces you need back on offense are going to be back, so you can use a sizable portion of the NIL budget for the portal, I would say, on defense this year. At least certainly Tennessee needs to do that. Um, yeah, sometimes I mean I mentioned before run its course. I mean Tennessee's defense was really really good last year, but even when it was really good last year, there was still an underlying frustration. If you think about it was an elite pass rush, yet they got no sacks against Georgia last year. You saw that sometimes even when Tennessee beat Alabama um, back in 22, it wasn't because of defense. It was a 52-49, I think, a Tennessee win. In Now, Tennessee certainly won games last year, a lot of games, and they got to the playoff in large part because of its defense. But when Tennessee needed it most, I think it still came up short at times, especially the pass rush, not being able to get to the quarterback against Georgia, against Alabama sometimes. So it played well, but didn't play well in the big games, and then it just didn't play well at all this year. So where does Tennessee go from here? Um, John, I feel like I know one name you're going to pitch out. I'm going to throw out one. Ryan Walters. Ryan Walters, to me, checks a lot of boxes. He's an accomplished defensive coordinator. He was the DC at Missouri for a couple 3 years. He was an elite defensive coordinator at Illinois. He's at Washington right now. So he's been a successful defensive coordinator. Back in 22, I think it was, Illinois had the best defense in the country. Gave up less than 13 points a game. That helped land him the head coaching job at Purdue. That didn't pan out. He was fired after a couple of years, but that showed you that he could sort of run his side of the ball. Has head coaching experience, which means Josh Heupel can say, "Hey, you go coach the defense. I'll coach the offense." He's an up-and-coming guy. You're getting him on the way up. He's 39 years old. As I mentioned, he has coached elite defenses, especially the one at Illinois a few years ago. And this one is important. Ryan Walters has worked with Josh Heupel. He was a GA at Oklahoma back in 2012. He coached alongside Josh Heupel on the Missouri staff for a couple years. So it's a guy that Josh Heupel is familiar with, has coached with, is an elite coordinator. Is a guy that you're getting on the way up. Like I said, he's just 39 years old. I think maybe that's somewhere that they look if you could pry him away from Washington. And this is still an SEC job and pays at a high level. So I would think Tennessee could at least get in the running to get Ryan Walters. John, give me a name you think they should look at. I think I know the name you're going to go with.
Well, this is perhaps going too far back. But Justin Wilcox really impressed me when he was at Tennessee as a defensive coordinator under Derek Dooley, 2010 and 11. Didn't have a lot of talent. Really had to scheme and has weaknesses. I thought he was very good at that. Those teams didn't have great defensive stats, but if you knew the personnel and knew what he was working with, the way he adapted to it, and as I said, mask weaknesses, that's so important when you're limited defensively. He has a very good reputation. He's been a defensive coordinator elsewhere, became the head coach at Cal, was there 9 years. He got fired after this season. Really tough place to win a lot. But I think he will be in demand as a defensive coordinator if he wants to stay in coaching. And I don't know if he's limited to the West Coast now, or if he would mind moving back to Knoxville. I don't think he had a problem being in Knoxville. I think he had a problem working with Derek Dooley. That's not an issue now. And I think he got really frustrated. However, he certainly proved himself as a defensive coordinator Ryan Walters sounds very good too. Uh, and I don't know. I don't know about the bidding process. The Texas Tech defensive coordinator. You mentioned him earlier. I forgot his name, but Texas Tech has a great defense. He's in his first year there. He's made other stops and he's coached a lot of different positions. I don't know if you can hire anybody away from Texas Tech on money, uh, unless he just wanted to work in the SEC. But I think he would have a hard time leaving there after one season, particularly the way they are well equipped to compete for championships now.
Yeah, and you mentioned this earlier in the episode that I mean the way that you can build up your defense is just go buy players, go buy elite players. Texas Tech did that. That's helped him. It would certainly help here if you could dip deep into the portal, pay a lot of money. And so let's use that to transition here about retooling the roster because we're coming off signing day last week. Tennessee had a class that's ranked number 7 in the 24/7 Sports Composite. Now that is the best ranking that a Josh Heupel signing class has ever had. He had a one that was ranked 10th. He had another one that was ranked 11th. But this is the farthest he's ever dipped into the top 10. I've even seen some that has his class at like 4 or 5. Some of the ratings, but it's a really really good class. Now so there's some players to celebrate in this class. Obvious guys. There's Faison Brandon, the 5-star quarterback. There's Tristan Keys, the 5-star wide receiver. Gabe Osenda is a high-end offensive tackle. You've got a couple linebackers in there. You've got depth at wide receiver. I think some really good options at wide receiver. Tyreek King, a local from Knox Catholic, I think could help them a lot. You got a safety like Joel Wyatt from Oakland in Murfreesboro. So there's a lot of good pieces in there. A lot of highly touted guys. There's a lot of 4-star guys, which is why this is a class that's that high. You don't get this high in the rankings just with 5 stars. You do it with a long list of 4 stars. That's how Georgia's done it. That's how Alabama's done it, and Tennessee has done it this year. But here's the critique. How many of these 28 guys, they signed 28 signees, 28 players, it's a big class. How many of these 28 guys will translate into wins in the 2026 season? John, I'm not asking you for like names or anything, but even in this time when freshmen play earlier than they used to because of NIL, they're still freshmen. And I just wonder, signing 28 guys, there's a lot to celebrate in there. Phenomenal class. But it seems to me that this class, like most classes, you'll see the benefits of it in 2 to 3 years, not next year. John, should it concern us at all that it looks like they're leaning very heavily into high school recruiting still? Should that set off any alarm bells that maybe Tennessee's not going to hit the portal as hard as fans expect?
Well, it would concern me because I just think that's the way to go now. I don't think you can look when you're assembling a team now. You need to look at the next year and take it year by year. You can't look at where a team will be in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Every year is a new year. Point toward that, pinpoint that. That's your goal. To have the best team possible should be Tennessee's goal in 2026. And you can't do that with freshmen, especially freshman quarterbacks. Tennessee needs to get another quarterback. If Joey Aguilar won't be eligible, perhaps he will. If he's eligible, fine. He's a solid SEC quarterback. But if he's not, you do not want to go into next season against that schedule with a true freshman or a redshirt freshman. I just don't think it will end well. So I think you've got to go hard in the portal and not just positions of need. I think you need to look at if you can get a player and make your depth chart stronger, if he's better than who you have at that position, go ahead. Don't worry about the year after that or how this player might develop. because there are no assurances that that player, as he develops, might not choose to go somewhere else later on after he is fully developed. I mean, Tennessee has a healthy NIL program, and it can compete, but it won't always win every monetary battle. So I just think it's really important. It's commendable that Tennessee signed that stronger class, but I just don't think it means as much as it did even 5 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, and to sort of put this in context, I was looking back at the class. Was it the 2023 class? I think it is the one with Nico in it. There were 25 guys signed in that class. 2 seasons later, or after 2 seasons later, there were only 10 of those 25 left on the roster. Those are guys that were not on the team this past season. So, and some you've already had, I think, 3 guys to this point announced they're going into the portal from the 2024 class. So, I mean, this is sort of the rule now in college football. You sign with a school, you're there for 2 years. After your second year, if you don't have a, pretty defined role, chance of starting in the rotation, if that hadn't happened by the end of your second year, you're jumping in the portal. That's not a Tennessee thing. That's an everywhere thing. And so, of these 28 guys that they signed, 14, 15 of them won't even be on the team after the 2027 season. It's just that's just how it is now. So I mean, so when I say, which one are they doing? Are they leaning on the high school players to rebuild this roster, or are they going to lean into the portal? You can do both. I think it was just into last week that I saw a report that the SEC that they're going to move forward with the 105 scholarships, that they're going to drop the 85 scholarships. And so basically you can have as many scholarship players as you want in the coming years. That's still in the works. But so doing that means you can actually do both. You can sign an enormous amount of signees, players in a recruiting class, and then also add an enormous number of transfers in the portal. Now, you got to pay, if not all of them, almost all of them. Anybody you're getting in the portal of any value, you're going to have to pay NIL money for. And then recruits that you get out of high school, you're going to pay about 90% of those guys. Now, some of them you're not going to pay that much to, but any player that's going to make a difference for you in that first year, you're certainly going to have to pay quite a bit for. So does Tennessee have the NIL budget to pay a lot in both directions, to high school recruits and to transfers? If they can do both, and I have heard whispers behind the scenes these past few weeks that Tennessee is ramping up to spend a lot of money on this roster. That how much is a lot, and they do have a ways to go compared to other schools in terms of the portal. Tennessee is the only school, I believe, they're the only SEC school in the last 2 years that has brought in a single digit transfers out of the portal each of the last 2 years. They're selective. They hit a lot more than they miss in the portal, but they just add like 8, 9 guys. That's what they usually add. They don't add like 20 or 30 guys like some other schools. Will they do that again, or will that number be a bit higher? When signing day, I think has some relevance here because, let me give you this example. This signing class that Tennessee just signed, there are 10 defensive linemen / edge rushers in this class. 10 guys playing up front on the defensive line. Usually Tennessee signs 5. Every year under Josh Heupel, I think they've signed 5. They signed 10 defensive linemen this year. Well, I mean, I think we're pretty confident in saying that Tennessee needs to add some interior defensive linemen out of the portal. Well, if you're signing that many out of high school, does that indicate that you're not going to sign many out of the portal, or are you going to do both? Maybe they do both. I'm a little curious to see if they would do that. There's a lot of defensive linemen to sign if you think you're still going to sign a bunch out of the portal. Now, they're losing some. they've lost some guys that have exhausted their eligibility up front, but still, you're adding two big numbers together if you're going to hit the portal hard, as well as the recruiting class. Josh Heupel, I still think, and I think we have enough evidence now to say that Josh Heupel believes that you build a championship roster through high school recruiting, and you just selectively supplement in the portal. That's how Ohio State does it. That's how Georgia does it. I think, again, numbers have shown that's how Josh Heupel feels. It's just his actions, his behavior tells you that. The fact that he still signs big classes, he retains guys as best as he can. He prioritizes retention, and he just he adds from the portal, but he just adds a single digit number of guys selectively. John, is that the way to go? I mean, is he right? Should he lean into this direction and try to sign high school players and just develop them long term and just be very selective in the portal? Or at this point, should he go heavy portal, sign 20 transfers and see how that does?
I think you have a better shot by signing a larger number of transfers. Now, you talk about being selective. To me, if you're going to, and you brought up Ohio State, it recruits well, Georgia recruits well, high school players. You go back to Ohio State's national championship team of 2024, added one of the top running backs in the SEC from Ole Miss, added the quarterback at Kansas State to run its offense, and took Caleb Downs, the All-American safety, away from Alabama. It was very selective. But I think if you go that route, then you've got to believe you have a championship caliber team, and you just need a few more players to push you over the top. When you say a few more players, they can't just be pretty good. To me, you're looking for All-American types when you go that way. Now, Zachariah Branch wasn't an All-American at Southern Cal, but he's an elite receiver. They had a deep receiving corps. Receiver, punt returner. Georgia got him. He's their guy in the passing game, and he's someone you have to contend with on defense. You have to watch where he lines up because of his speed. He's a big play waiting to happen, and he's really helped Georgia. If you go that route, you got to be very selective, but make sure you're right about them and make sure they're not just pretty good, but they're the top players in the country, I think. Maybe you can go that way. Otherwise, you go and you just try and fortify your roster as best you can. Where if you see you've got a better player in the portal than you have in your starting lineup, don't worry about where you think that player on your roster will be in a year or two. Think where he is right now. If the other guy's better, take him. Now, LSU did that on defense this year. Didn't work out for him, but not because of the defense. Brian Kelly's strategy was to be selective in the portal, built through high school recruiting. He was in there a couple of years. He expected their national title, and he wasn't giving it to them right away. So he goes out and he rebuilds the defense through the portal. Got elite players, and the defense was great. But he ignored an offensive line that had all new starters basically, except for one player. And that was his undoing. The offense floundered. He got fired. I just think you look at what schools like Indiana have done, what Ole Miss has done, what Vanderbilt has done, you got a better shot going heavy in the portal.
Yeah, I do think Josh Heupel has had he's had a lot of caution of running players off that he thinks may pan out. I think anytime he adds somebody in the portal, he thinks about how his current players at that position will react. Now, maybe some of his caution has been put to the side. He fired Tim Banks. He had never fired an assistant coach before. Maybe he's moving beyond hurting feelings, so to speak. That Tennessee has had exit interviews the past week since the Vanderbilt game, and And I know a lot of fans know this, but I'll just say this to the fans that don't. If you see a large number of players going into the portal, don't freak out. Like sometimes that's a positive. Sometimes these coaches and NIL staff and all that sit down with these players and they say, you're not going to get much NIL money, or you're getting a pay cut, or your playing time is going to get cut. Feel free to look elsewhere. And they look elsewhere and they go somewhere. And then you fill that spot with what you think is a better player. Um, it seems like every off season I get emails from, again, a portion of fans that say, "Hey, what's going on with the morale of this team, with the team chemistry? Is it somebody else jumped in the portal? What's going on? Are they losing this team?" Yes, they're losing it. They told some guys to leave and they left. That's how that works. That's how you upgrade your roster, and they get paid NIL money, so we don't have to shed any tears or anything over players leaving. But so that's going to happen. I think most fans now sort of understand that it's not a team chemistry thing when guys jump in the portal. Sometimes it's just agreeing to part ways because it's not working out here. But I say that to say I think they're going to have to add a larger number of players in the portal if they think they're going to have a chance to get back to the playoff mix. John, let's just do this the numbers of guys they need to add in the portal. We'll do a bigger episode on this as we get closer to the transfer portal. It opens January 2nd, so we got a little time. But on offense, just a number that we think they should add. Quarterback, I think we agree that if Joey Aguilar doesn't come back, they probably need to add a quarterback, a transfer quarterback. So that's one on offense. Offensive line and wide receiver, I'm thinking through using spots and money on defense. So I think I'm kind of fine with them not adding an offensive lineman or a wide receiver from the portal. And I say that because offensive line, they'll get probably 4 starters back. They may even get 5 starters back if Lance Hurd wants to flip to the right side. I don't know if that'll happen, but let's just say they get 4 starters back. They give a few options at the other tackle. I don't think they should add an offensive lineman if they get everybody back that I think is expected to be back. At wide receiver, they'll get 2 of their starters back. They'll get Braylon Staley back. They'll get Mike Matthews. Staley especially will cost them to get him back. His value has gone up. But they've got 2 freshmen they like, Travis Smith, Rodarius Jackson. Tristan Keys is coming as a 5-star. Tyreek King is coming in as a high 4-star. Like, they have some options at wide receiver. I don't think they necessarily need to add a wide receiver or offensive line. Are you with me on that, John? Those 2 positions, they don't have to add through the portal at those 2 positions.
I'm not. I mean, I don't know their talent in the offensive line as well as they do. So if they feel good about that, fine. I thought after last year that Tennessee desperately needed to sign a high-impact wide receiver. It didn't. It got a receiver from Alabama, a transfer who hasn't factored into the offense any whatsoever. But it didn't get – there were a lot of really good receivers. I mentioned one earlier, Zachariah Branch went to Georgia. What if you'd have gotten Zachariah Branch from Southern Cal, and then Georgia couldn't have got him? Casey Concepcion has made a difference for Texas A&M. He's a big play guy. I think I would want one wide receiver. If I could get an elite receiver, I think the receiving core is solid. You figure that maybe they were right about Staley being good. They were right about Matthews being good and productive receivers. But I still think Tennessee, I would like to have it sign a guy out of the portal like a Branch who can make people miss, who can turn a short pass into a big game. I mean, Tennessee has enough speed there, but they don't have that guy that gets in the open field and just terrifies the secondary. I think that would be a worthwhile addition. So maybe that's the only difference I would have.
Okay, so add a quarterback if they don't get Aguilar back. Well, I'll go with what you said there. Your suggestion: add a wide receiver, maybe, or maybe just add a player between offensive line and wide receiver. Tight end, I would not. They had 2 good freshman tight ends this year, and Ethan Davis. If you get him back, I like what they have at tight end. Running back, I think I'd probably look about adding a running back. I don't think I would overspend there. I mean, what they got out of Star Thomas this year, I think they could go find somebody else like that. I mean, Dwan Morris will come back, so they have a good young back. Deshaun Bishop is there. Peyton Lewis has not shown me enough yet. We'll see how he develops, but he's just been a short yardage back. I would say maybe they could add a running back. So let's say they add a quarterback, maybe a running back, maybe a wide receiver. Let's just say that's 3 guys on the offensive side they add from the portal. Let's hop over to the defense. Edge rusher, I don't think I wouldn't necessarily add any. They have Jordan Ross there. They have Caleb Herring there. So they have 2 guys at that position, and they have some younger players also. They also have younger players in the interior defensive line, but I don't think they've shown enough to rely on those guys. They graduated Dominic Bailey, Bryson Eason, Jackson Moy, and Tyree West. That's 4 big bodies inside, and I thought they still needed some help on the defensive line this year. So interior defensive linemen, John, I'm adding at least 2. Is that a fair number? I mean, you got to add at least 2 just at D tackle, right?
Yeah, I think I would go heavy on defense. I agree with you there. I would try and get, if I can see really good defensive players anywhere, I would go after them. Linebacker, cornerback, safety. Yeah, I would want all those guys. And you need more. I thought the defensive line would be better than it is.
Yeah, I think John just dropped off there a little bit. Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for replenishing the middle of Tennessee's defense. That's defensive tackle, that's linebacker, and then that's safety. So the middle of the defense. I think they've got to replenish all the spots in there. I would add a couple of defensive tackles, maybe a linebacker. That depends on whether or not Arion Carter comes back, though. If you have Arion, if you have Jeremiah T. Landry, you still have Jaden Harmon, you have Perlotti. So you have some young linebackers there. Development may be the key there. But I'm hitting hard on the secondary. I think they need a corner. They'll get back Ricky Gibson healthy. Ty Redmond is a good developing young corner, but they've got to have some help there. So I would add a corner. They don't have a nickelback, the star position. Jalen McMurray's gone. Boo Carter's gone. And so they've got to have a starting nickel. I think they need a corner. I would go at least 1 safety to put with alongside Idris Farouk. And a lot of this depends on how many guys Tennessee loses to then have the roster space, NIL money, and all that to fill those holes. But they have to upgrade whether or not they lose a lot of guys or not. So we're saying, I'd say 3 guys on offense, and then defense, let's say 2 defensive linemen, a linebacker, a corner, a nickel, a safety. That bare bones gets us to 9. So I think they need to 10, 12, 15 players, I would say, because we're saying if you got all those and they were all hits, those were all guys that could fill exactly the spot that you wanted them to fill. And so I guess looking at it that way, I could see them adding around what they've added, which is about 10, or I could see them going the 15 or more route if they wanted to just, get rid of some of the risk. I mean, we've seen this with Tennessee's recruiting class that sometimes they sign a lot of guys, I think, thinking that a portion of them will pan out, and then they can let the misses go after a couple of years. You don't usually see teams do that in the portal, but that's how it works out at a lot of places, especially those that sign 25, 30 guys out of the portal. So I think Tennessee will hit the portal a little harder than they have before. We'll go into that more detail as we get closer to it and we see how many guys jump in the portal. John, let's end with this. Music City Bowl. Yes, the 2025 season is still going on. Tennessee's going to play Illinois. That's a pairing of 2 8-4 teams, It's going to be on December 30th. It's going to be at Nissan Stadium, obviously in Nashville. John, the fan reaction that I got mostly was kind of meh, just kind of whatever. And and I understand where that comes from. Josh Heupel's debut season in 21. This is the bowl game that Tennessee played in, the Music City Bowl. So there's sort of a feel that this is the cycle is starting back over, that you're back at square one. I mean, Tennessee has a better team than that 21 team. But I can kind of understand some of the frustration. John, what was your initial reaction to just seeing Tennessee is back in the Music City Bowl 4 years after being there last?
Went over Southern Cal and it beat Duke early in the year. But other than that, it wasn't competitive against really that much against Ohio State, Indiana, and then it had a Washington, had a horrible game against Washington. And then an awful loss to a bad Wisconsin team, a really bad team, 27-10 late in the year. Its offense kind of petered out down the stretch in the last 4 games. Luke Altmaier's a good quarterback, but overall offense, not much of a running game. So to me, this is a game Tennessee can win. And I don't know if there's anything more than you can ask of being 8-4 and going to the Music City Bowl. I mean, what great things can come of it? I would just say trying to add a win and avoid a loss.
Yeah, I mean, 9-4 looks a lot better than 8-5 on paper. That's one thing to play for. Tennessee has a number of seniors. I actually think Tennessee can be sort of a tough out in a bowl game right now because a lot of the top quarterbacks will probably opt out. There aren't a lot of elite quarterbacks, those that have performed to an elite level, that are going to be in sort of mid-tier bowls. And Joey Aguilar is one of those. He's going to play in this bowl. And by the way, Luke Altmaier is another one. Every indication we've got out of Illinois that Luke Altmaier is absolutely going to play in this game. Brett Bielema, the Illinois coach, commented just this week on the fact that he knows that Tennessee went and tried to get Luke Altmaier, lure him into the portal back in the spring. Altmaier didn't go. Tennessee ended up with Joey Aguilar. It turned out well for both schools, and now they're going to face off in this game. There was some frustration I had read from Tennessee fans that the UT did not get the Gator Bowl. That was on the table. I'll give you a little bit of background on this. There were really, after the Citrus Bowl was filled by Texas, and then Vanderbilt filled the ReliaQuest Bowl, what used to be the Outback. That was your top 2 teams not in the playoff. They filled the top 2 bowls. After that, you've got Tennessee, Missouri, and LSU to fill what, sort of have the pick of the litter of the bowls that are left after that. It usually goes Gator, Music City, and then some others, Texas Bowl, Duke's Mayo Bowl, Liberty Bowl, etc. Missouri was not going to play in the Music City Bowl because they played in it last year. There was a thought that LSU would play in the Music City Bowl, which would send Tennessee to the Gator Bowl, and Missouri would go to the Texas Bowl in Houston. I believe the Music City really just did not want LSU. Interim coach, because Lane Kiffin's not going to coach the game. Just not somebody, that's not a team that they wanted. And so they were left with, they were going to get Tennessee. They wanted Tennessee, for obvious reasons, in Nashville. But if they didn't want LSU and they couldn't take Missouri, Tennessee made sense there. There was a faction of Tennessee, I think, that would have liked the Gator Bowl because it is a Florida Bowl. It's a warm weather bowl. But it's not South Florida, and it's not Tampa. You're not in Central Florida either, and it's not Citrus. And the date was the big thing. Music City Bowls played on the 30th of December. The Gator Bowls played on the 27th. There was a little bit of a pushback, I would say, within the athletic department that, is the Gator Bowl that much better, or is it better at all than compared to the Music City Bowl to play on that odd date? December 27th means your players, your coaches, your staff, your support staff, everybody's going to be at the bowl site through Christmas. And December 30th, Music City Bowl, you're most likely going to travel after Christmas. So you can have Christmas at home with your family, then go play the bowl game. It's a better date. I would hope that the Gator Bowl could maybe adjust that date in the future if Tennessee is ever up for it again. But you're trying to make all parties happy, and I think Tennessee was perfectly fine with playing the Music City because of that date compared to the Gator. And then that made the Music City Bowl happy. And the Gator Bowl, I think, had a couple of good options between Tennessee and Missouri, and it worked out for Missouri to go there. So a little bit of horse trading going on, but all those bowls are on the same level that we're talking about. And Tennessee ended up in Music City, not the one that a lot of fans would want, but it is drivable, obviously, and it'll be a different fan base there. I mean, I think a lot of season ticket holders travel for the Florida Bowls. I think a lot of season ticket holders don't necessarily go to the Music City Bowl. That's more of a bowl that, like, the fans that don't get to go to a lot of home games get to go to, especially the ones in Middle Tennessee. So it'll be a lot of tickets sold. I've already heard there's a lot of tickets sold, but it'll be Tennessee fans, obviously, but maybe not the same crowd as you would get at Neyland, which can be a good thing, bad thing. It doesn't really matter, but Tennessee will still have a lot of fans there. This may or may not be the last time we see Joey Aguilar because of the Diego Pavia court case that we're waiting on. If there's some kind of a preliminary injunction there or some type of decision in that court case, maybe Joey Aguilar can return next season, challenging that junior college eligibility rule. But if that doesn't happen, I would say by the bowl game, the Tennessee's got to move on. They've already got a plan. They've got a plan on what quarterbacks they can go get, I think, in the portal, if that's the route they want to go. And they're not going to wait till right when the portal opens to do all the back channel work that they need to get a quarterback. So just, Tennessee fans, enjoy the game. I think Tennessee can win this game. I think if they do win it, it's probably a shootout. If you remember back to the Music City Bowl in 21, Tennessee lost that one in, I think it was double overtime or maybe overtime to Purdue. It was like a 49-45 game or something like that. I think that's close to what Tennessee will have in this one. I think both quarterbacks are going to throw for a lot of yards, high scoring. I still would take Tennessee in this one, but we'll wait and see. And as soon as that game's over, things will turn to the transfer portal. I think we're going to wrap it up there. A lot more to talk about in the coming weeks. Music City Bowl, transfer portal, roster building. As I speak, Tennessee is having exit interviews with players and determining whether or not they're going to come back. And so there'll be more added to the transfer portal list of guys that will be departing Tennessee. And you always have the possibility of opt-outs. We'll monitor that. And, Josh Heupel is looking for his next defensive coordinator. We'll see if that's somebody they hire outside of the staff, or if William Inge is going to have any kind of chance to take that spot. He is the interim defensive coordinator in the Music City Bowl. He's been a defensive coordinator before, but we'll see if they want to flip the script completely or stay in-house. Follow our coverage of all those Vols topics at KnoxNews.com. Share this podcast with your fellow UT fans. We'd love for you to subscribe as well, just to make sure you never miss us. And thanks for listening to this episode of The Volunteer State.